I'm starting to recognize the parallels between white folks and women, like the double talk. I mean, I just said it. I just called it out. One of the white people who are subscribed to me, they were like, "That's not true." I was like, again, the evidence is right here on Willie D's page. I mean, he actually showed the screenshots of the comments. It seriously reminds me of when you have women talking about, I have nobody to date, ain't no man on my level, and then as soon as you point out a man that is either on their level or exceeding their level, then the complaint switches to evil patriarchy and men leading, and men only want to oppress women. As soon as you start talking about them dealing with a man that's ahead of them, all of a sudden now it's evil patriarchy, when their number one complaint was men are not on my level, all that nonsense, right? And so, this whole situation with the these black folks that went out, the 19 families that went out and bought some land in Georgia. Again, white people run around, oh, y'all black people, you need to show some personal responsibility. You need to do for self, right? Y'all need to stop mooching off the white man, right? That's what they say. That's what black people, the criticism black people hear all the time, day in and day out. These typical white supremacist talking points, right? Then as soon as black people do for self, it's a fucking problem. It's whining, it's bitching. Just like I told you, that white kid that said, my father says, what the problem is with the black community? Black people don't take care of their own. They don't do for self. I'm like, you know what? You're 100% right. Black people need to handle their own business. We need our own banks. We need our own businesses. We need our own supermarkets. We need our own law firms. We need our own, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he immediately, oh, that sounds like reverse racism. I mean, you got to think about the sick pathology of white folks when it comes to this shit. We don't want you around us, okay? Y'all are a problem. Why don't you go somewhere? And then as soon as black people say, okay, fine, we're out. We're the fuck out. We're going somewhere else. We're going to go and, create our own shit. Just like with the Moulin Rouge that wasn't open for more than 11 months. And what happened? The Italian mob that was controlling, all the big casinos out there in Las Vegas, when the Moulin Rouge got too big and people were really going out there, you had non-racist white people who would even go there, who brought a lot of attention, like Frank Sinatra, because of the whole Sammy Davis Jr. and the Rat Pack and all that other stuff, So, what benefit did the Moulin Rouge have? There was race mixing. Right? People were allowed to socialize together. The Moulin Rouge was actually inclusive when white folks were exclusive. And because they didn't want no competition, they had to shut that bitch down. And that is what racism is about. It's about competition. It is not about all this nonsense about skin color and all this shit and racial pride. And no, it's about money. It's about competition. We don't want black people to get their shit together, because if they get their shit together, they will be competing with us, and they will be cutting into our margins. That's what the fuck it comes down to. White people want to sit there and they want to gaslight and all this bullshit and that. Oh, it's not what it's about. Yes, the fuck it is. That's what it is about. It's about the goddamn money. Just bitching up a storm. What are you afraid? Like, this community is going to start, producing, solid households with, solidly minded, black men and women, and with the proper orientation, and a bunch of productive individuals that are going to start a new Tulsa, Oklahoma? Is that what you're afraid of? Sure as hell looks like it to me. Damn. Trying to pigeonhole a group of people, we're going to criticize you to death and say, oh, you're not doing this and you should be doing that and da-da-da-da. The minute you go out and fucking do it, fucking complaints. Motherfuckers is bitching. They're complaining. This is why I say white people are fragile. There's a white fragility that is on insane levels. And the thing is like white people will say, oh, black people, they're fragile. They're always screaming racism and this and that, because the racism is going on. White people, the dominant group in society. control the Fortune 500 companies, the fucking banks. This society and this system was built for y'all. Black people try to carve out their little small space. Only something like 14% of the population, last time I looked, right? Trying to carve out their little small space. Bitching. You know, I don't know what special powers black people have over white people. Because, like, when it comes to other groups, like, there's not this level of bitching. Right? The Hispanics, they go off, they do their thing. It's like nobody notices. Asians go off, they do their thing. Nobody notices. Black people go off and do their thing, and it's a bunch of bitching. Now, what I will agree with Willie D on, black people got to learn how to move in silence and do what they do, and just do it. Stop making all these fucking announcements and shit like you've already accomplished something before it even starts, before you even get the ball rolling. Now it's all eyes on you, all the Breitbart people that are writing comments. Now everybody's like, oh, they're out there trying to form an ethno-state. Like, this is what they're saying now. This is what they're going to say now. And I'm like, damn, man, like, why don't y'all know how to move in silence? You do what you gotta do, and then next thing you know, when the next time they look up, you know, you don't already set the shit up already. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the smart thing that Asians do. Asians don't make a whole bunch of noise. Asians don't protest, like I said before. When the last time you seen a march of Asians? They don't be out there marching like that. Okay? They sit there, they say, you know what, we gonna get our politicians in place. Go ahead and look at all the politicians in California and shit, in Hawaii. They make sure their people are in there. They get their people in there. Okay, they don't negotiate from a position of weakness. They don't negotiate from a subordinate position. You know, and so, like, I have to agree with Willie D, you know, on that point. It's like, and black people, you know, we get stupid about it because we'll sit there and, you know, we'll be loudly running around. No black people are doing anything, unless it's plastered on the front page. Like, there's no code. Like, there's no underground, like, messaging board or something like that. Like, there's nothing that's like, hey, psst, speak easy. This is what we're doing. And you know, make sure you stay on code and don't tell nobody else. No, we don't operate like that. We want shit to go through the same channels and the same platforms that white people utilize so that they come across it, they read it, and it's like, oh my God, like Black Wall Street, like nobody knew about Black Wall Street until Black Wall Street was burnt the fuck down, until it was doing its thing. Only the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma knew that Black Wall Street was kicking ass like that, or the black people that were writing, what was the newspaper that they had at the time? It wasn't the Black Star. What was the newspaper that they had? They had all different type of black newspapers and publications specifically for black people, for their business, you know, their situation, you know, what they're confronted with. But when it comes to, you know, today, it's like everybody wants to be loud with it. Everybody wants to make noise. And I understand why people do it, because otherwise black people don't think black people are doing anything. But I think in large part that goes back and ties back to the fact that we don't control our own educational system, where we don't set the parameters, set the code, you know, set the ideology, so that everybody, you know, we know that we don't have to be loud with it, but we understand that majority of people, because we've taught them to be this way, are on code. But see, when you're just in the general public system and you're running around with this, we're all Americans, despite the fact that America doesn't treat you as such and America doesn't recognize you as such, that's what creates, you know, these sort of problems of miscommunication and problems of exposing yourself before you even get to checkmate. Right? And so, you know, then what white supremacy does, they'll come through and they will make sure this town fails. And then the headline will be, well, you see, the niggers, they can't govern themselves. You know, niggers, they can't do anything themselves, because they want to perpetuate the idea of that black people are incapable and they're going to fail and they can't accomplish anything. But because you showed your hand and you showed your card too early, and again, you're dealing with a group of people that control the whole entire goddamn infrastructure, okay? That's going to present a problem. Now, obstacles are going to be made. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing for white folks to sit back and blackball black people, on some stupid shit like, oh, well, just make sure you don't trade. Do us like they did Haiti. Well, make sure you don't trade with them. Successful slave revolt. How dare they have a successful slave revolt? What's his name? Toussaint Louis Vuitton. Come to France and we'll have a discussion. Lock that nigga up, right? They threw his ass in jail and he died in fucking prison. Okay? And then make sure that nobody trades with Haiti. And not only that, we're gonna put them in debt and tell them that they owe us for lost property, right? And then stand there and say, oh well, see, black people just can't govern themselves. I mean, look at Haiti. Look at the conditions in Haiti. They can't. I mean, look, you can look at Dominican Republic. They're doing okay, right? With racist ass Trujillo, who convinced an island of mulattoes and majority black people that that they come from something else and a different bloodline and all this other shit, and that they don't come from black people, that more of them come from Arawak Indians and Taino Indians and shit like that. You see, trying to Europeanize the country. You see, black people got to stop showing their hand when they go out here and they trying to make moves. You know what I'm saying? This shit should not be all over the news that black people are trying to do this, because obviously you see the white media is using it, Breitbart and all that other shit. They're using it to paint these false narratives. You see, so I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad these families decided to, try to do something. But again, I wish we were more sophisticated about in the manner in which we went about it. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. That's my video. SWP out. Reverse racism. This is reverse racism. It's fucking bullshit. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. Told you so. It's crazy. Like, just the more I think about it, the more I just, I come up with these answers, and it's like, white people, they're like, what they're like, and it all ties back to issues with women. They're like women. I mean, every time I think about the type of shit that white supremacy does, I'm like, you're like a fucking woman when you're in a relationship with them. It's like you try to point out something, and you get mad enough, and let's say you call her a bitch. All bets are off. You called me a bitch. It's like you were acting like a bitch. You called me a bitch. Now every valid point that you've made is somehow invalidated because you called her out of her name, and now she's going to flip the argument and make it all about you calling her a bitch and whatever ideas that she has about how you disrespected her, as opposed to the fact that what she did that pissed you off initially was more egregious than you calling her a bitch, right? So, like, I'm like looking at the whole situation. Like, I just look at like white people. They project all the time. Like, if you really want to know what's going on, all you gotta do is listen to white people, and the accusations they make about black people is really a projection of what's going on with them. Like the whole, black people, y'all play the victim. White people have been trying to play the victim when they're not even victims of shit. I mean, when you look at it, like there's the stated, and then there's the unstated, right? Going back to this whole black people, the 19 families going off and trying to form their own community, which I think they prematurely made a statement about it. But it's like, okay, white people will come through and they'll scream, reverse racism, right? And white people have a long history, right? They're like, oh, this is an ethno state. You're denying white people entry, right? Even though that hasn't even happened yet, right? But I'm saying, when you look at it, right? Black family wants to move into a predominantly white community, right? And we've seen examples of this. I know a doctor that this happened to. They went inside the house and wrote nigger on the wall when he moved into the neighborhood. Where do you hear stories about that? Where do you hear a white person moving into a predominantly black neighborhood and then black people spraying "Get out, cracker" on the wall, "Get out, whitey"? Like where does that go on? White people have a long history of saying we don't want black people in our community. They have it in the covenants in their communities. Levittown, Pennsylvania, Levittown, New Jersey, which is now Willingboro, New Jersey. Okay, go look into the history of Levittown. He did not want black people in his communities. Didn't want them there. That's why the Myers of Levittown, Pennsylvania was such a big, it was such a big issue. This is a white community. Again, all that shit with the denial of FHA loans and all these covenants, you will not sell the property to a black person. White people created exclusively white communities. You don't want black people around. You don't want us in your space. You don't want us in your hair. You say it all the time. Personal responsibility this. Y'all need to do for self that. Y'all need to stop breathing up all the white man's air. Y'all need to stop mooching and taking this and taking that. Why don't you go and do this and do that? Y'all need to stop being victims. Y'all need to stop being beggars. Y'all need to stop trying to shame white people and trying to do the right thing, because we will not do the right thing. Fuck what the Bible has to say. Now pardon me as I head to my way onto church or something shit like that, right? I'm saying this is what they say. So you get a bunch of black people that say, okay, they don't want us around. We're going to carve out our own space, right? No rules have been implemented yet. Just a discussion like, hey, we're going to go over here and start anew and have a thriving, intact black community, right? And white people is bitching. I mean, bitching. You think that they would be, I'm saying, y'all bring every other coon Negro on Fox News and all the conservative talking points and Thomas Sowell and Larry Elders and you sit there every time they say something about black people actually being personally responsible and taking accountability, for their plight or their condition or this situation. You bring out Larry Elders, you bring out, Thomas Sowell, you bring out whatever other coon black person you want to bring out, right? Then when black people actually do it, you're bitching. You're filing complaints. You're screaming reverse racism. You're screaming somehow your white people are being excluded when they haven't been excluded yet. Not to mention, what are you really bitching about? Example, what white people, seriously speaking, let's say this community popped up and it was doing well and it was kick ass and it was 99.9% black. Okay? I'm saying, again, it's already been proven throughout American history that white people don't want to be around black people. It's already been proven. So what are you going to do? What are you trying to fight for your right to march into the black community when you don't even want to be there? You don't want to be there. So you just want to have the right to go into the black community, but you don't really want, you don't want to live there. You just want to be able to, it's my right to walk through this thriving black community. It's my right. So basically you're going to start doing like the open carry people do and just I'm going to walk directly through this black community and dare somebody to stop me, right? You just got to come in there and prove that white people are still the dominant force in America and prove that no black people can stop you from doing what you want to do in your home, country of America as you see it, right? It's so even though you don't want to be there, even though you never buy property there, right? You're going to bitch and file a complaint even though you have no intentions of being there. None at all. None whatsoever. You're not interested? Are you interested in living here? No. Are you interested in your kids going to school here? No. Okay, so what are you mad about? It's my right to walk through this predominantly black community. And if I so wanted to move here, it's my right as an American citizen to move. But you don't want to be around black people, right? Right. And if a black person moved into your neighborhood or your community, right, you do a whole bunch of unspeakable things that you would then later deny, like writing, spray painting nigger on the wall, right? Or harassing, like they did that guy in Ohio with the flag wars by coming up with a whole bunch of, crazy ordinances or whatever to try to get the person out of there, fine them to death, right? This is all the type of stuff that has already been done. It's already documented. Like, white people are talking about black people doing shit that black people have never done. That's the crazy part. They're bitching about a reverse racism that hasn't even happened yet. And then on top of that, like, I'm like, where is it that black people anywhere got all the good shit that white people don't have access to, that they can't get from other white people? Like, where the fuck is that going on? Where is it that if black people close the doors on you, you can't then turn around and go to, some white entity or organization or structure or whatever somewhere and get what you need? Where with black people, if white people slam the door on black people, a lot of times there is no alternative. You're just shut out, and that's the end of it. You see the false equivalence that white people try to make here? You see just the utter false equivalence. And they're over there bitching up a storm. Just bitching in the comment sections. I done found multiple pieces on it, and they're all bitching. At least 50% of the comments. I'm like, damn, like these people aren't even, like, you would sit there, you would think that they would say, and again, this is being too rational, but they would be like, good job, black people. That's what we want to see. Personal responsibility. Take accountability for yourself. That's right. Stop mooching off of the white man and blaming everything on whitey. You black people need to go out here and handle your own business and build up your own community and stop the violence in your own community. And that's what you need to do. So if some well-educated black people want to go off and buy some land, because they realize that the problems in Detroit that have been created by the system of white supremacy are just entirely too great and entirely too big, and they just want to go off like elite white people do, and only deal with, other white people who are educated just like white people do, right? But in this case, dealing with other black people who are educated, professional, well-to-do, or whatever, right? It's within their rights to do that, right? No shame, right? Nah, that's not what you get from white folks. What you get from white folks is the classic double talk, talking out of both sides of their face. Oh, black people, they're all on welfare, breathing up all the white man's air. Other side of the face. Oh, fucking black people taking all the white man's jobs with affirmative action. They do the same thing with Mexicans. The Mexicans taking all the white man's jobs that we're too good to work for because they don't pay enough, and I'm too good to pick strawberries. And then turn right around and start bitching about how they're all lazy and they're rapists and criminals coming across the border and all that shit. This shit makes no sense. It's just like that white guy said with that video talking about Antifa. I thought the left was nothing but a bunch of snowflakes. The extreme left. They're a bunch of snowflakes, and they're all in their feelings, and it's feelings over facts, and they're a bunch of pansies, and they cry themselves to sleep at night. Then when they out there, beating people up and tearing shit up and whatnot, now all of a sudden they're a bunch of, as liberal rednecks said, queer ninja assassins. I'm like, well, which one is it? Either they out there whipping your ass and you need to mobilize and get your 2A militias together, or they're a bunch of fucking snowflakes and, they're all in their feelings and they're not going to do anything because, they didn't wake up in the morning and have a glass of freaking, Jack Daniels or Johnny Walker Black. no, we don't drink coffee. We wake up in the morning and we drink whiskey because it puts hair on your chest, right? Because they're a bunch of freaking LGBT, fruit-tards, right? Again, talking out of both sides of their face. They can't make up their mind.
New text message.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. And hold on a second. Yeah, I don't know why I get so worked up over this, because like you all know this, I know this, like we all know this. All white folks are gonna do is come in the room and just gaslight like a motherfucker and try to make it, well, you're just seeing things, you're just crazy, I think that you're the real racist in the room. Again, the response to racism is not racism. It's the response. It's the part that blows my mind is like, well, what the fuck you expect black people to do? What do you want us to do? You don't want us in your space. You don't want us at your venues. You don't want us, in your arenas, right? You don't want us there, right? Too many black people show up. What do? You pack your shit up and move. White flight, right? White fright. And it's not like these black people sit there and, 19 black families forced their way into a white community. No, they went to bumblefuck, bought a piece of fucking land and said, hey, we're going to try to start something. And the crazy thing is most of them probably will not see it to its completion. They will die. It'll be like the fucking pyramids of Egypt and shit. They will die before they see the end of the construction of such a situation. But you gotta start somewhere. You gotta start somewhere. I mean, it's just nuts. It's like, you don't want us in your space. Too many black people show up at the club. Oh, it's a black club. We're not going here anymore. Too many black people go to, the school. Oh, it's a black school. We don't want to go here anymore. Too many black people show up in your neighborhood. Oh, it's a black neighborhood. We don't want to be here anymore. Too many black people show up to your beach. Oh, it's a black beach. We don't want to be here anymore. Black people go off and they create their own little space, or at least attempt to, try to. And it's bitching. Motherfuckers is out here filing complaints. You would think that they would be like, thank God the black people decided to go and create their own space and not be around us and not be in our hair. And we don't have to worry about them talking about integration and injustice and racism and the way that we're treating them, because obviously we can't treat them negatively if they're not around, right? Right? So I'm saying all sides win, right? If we go back to segregation, right? Black people realize they can't integrate with white people because white people is fucked up. White people don't want us there, right? They don't like the shame that black people bring, and calling them out about how racist they are all the time, right? So white people don't have to hear that, right? So you would think, right, black people go to their corner, white people go to their corner, everybody's happy, right? But instead, you got white people running up and bitching because now they want to turn it into, it's about their rights and how no black person can tell us where we can and cannot go, even though it's neighborhoods and communities that we have absolutely no interest of going in. I'm like, so let me get this right. You're fighting for the right to what? Go anywhere you want to go? Oh, you mean the same thing that black people do when they're fighting for the right to live amongst white people and predominantly white communities when you don't want them there? You know what I'm saying? Like this is childlike shit. This is like fucking the type of shit that little girls do. Oh my God, man. It's like, okay, so you're not even going to follow through on the shit. You're just bitching for the sake of bitching. You're just filing a complaint for the sake of filing a complaint. Men are not on my level. Okay, fine. Here's a man that's above your level. Evil patriarchy, misogyny, misogynoir, white supremacist, capitalist, heteronormative, cisgendered patriarchy. Do away with it. It's like, wait a minute, what? How, Sway? How? I thought this was a problem. I thought you couldn't find anybody on your level. How? How is this a fucking problem? I mean, it's insane. Like, it's just insane. The rhetoric, the shit that people say. I don't know what to do. You know, I'm like, okay, so clearly this contest cannot be won by being logical and philosophically consistent. Like, clearly this contest cannot be won. Again, this goes back to what Nellie Fuller said. White people want to control the conversation from both ends. They want to tell you how you should feel, and they want to complain and tell you how they feel. But they do not want you to define your own narrative and your own experience for yourself that makes you look bad. They're like Donald Trump. You know, like with this new book that came out. What's it called? Rage or some shit like that. I forget what's this guy's name. Woodward. Anyway, the guy came out with the book and shit. Donald Trump calling him all hours of the night. What's going to be in the book? What you going to say about me? I hope that you're going to say everything's good. Because, you know, the economy is just really doing really well right now. And the economy is just kicking ass. And we've never had a stronger economy. Well, you know, Mr. President, we're kind of talking about the COVID and how you knew about it, like, way back in February. But you didn't really, you know, do that much about it and whatnot, right? Because it turns out even the whole thing with you know, blocking off China, he didn't want to do that. And then later on, he did it and then took credit for it, even though it wasn't even his original idea. You see, like, I mean, look, man, I don't know how long white people think they can run this game for. I'm like, are y'all really just going to indefinitely try to run this game? I guess so. You know, but it's like, I mean, it's just like with police brutality. It's like, yo, there's cameras all over the place. You know what I'm saying? Oh, and by the way, did y'all see that Utah video? That video's from like 6 months ago. Oh, man, this dude John Wicked both of these cops. You ain't hear no noise. You ain't hear nothing. You know, they talking about this, whoever shot these cops in that had the ambush in LA. You know what I mean? But you got this guy. I mean, you got to watch the video. The cop, it's on police activity. The cop is up there. I mean, the guy is up there. I mean, he is playing the victim like crazy. I don't want to go to jail. No, please stop. Oh, no, please help. He's doing it. And then out of nowhere, this motherfucker pulls out a gun and just starts John Wicking all over the place. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the one cop, one cop survived. He has attempted murder charges. The other cop dead. You know, it looks like a headshot. You know what I mean? So you see the cop, you know, body cam go back, he hits the ground, and he's done. He's done. You know, I mean, John Wick, the gun came out of nowhere. They tased him, all this stuff, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, I'm like, real talk, man, if they came with the same energy, you know, with the same, you know, lack of benefit of the doubt that they come at a lot of black men with, chances are them cops probably would have still been alive. But see, that's that whole aspect of white privilege that a lot of white folks want to sit there and deny. There's another clip, and I know because a lot of cops there was a video on YouTube that a lot of, and they use this video in training. There was a veteran. He was an old kooky Vietnam veteran, and he was jumping up and down and dancing and, you know, telling the cop, you know, to fuck off and all this other shit. Anyway, the cop's like, get away from the car, you know, giving him all these commands. And he's just like, fuck you, motherfucker. He starts going off. Then he goes in the car, pulls out a 30-30 carbine, you know, which is, you know, basically a World War II gun. And then he ends up shooting at the cop. You know, the cop, I think, shoots him in the stomach. And I think the cop had a 9mm. It wasn't even a 40 cal. And you know, he just ate that shit. He ate that 9mm. Like, he bent over and it just started continuing to fire. Like, you know, he was like, oh, I'm hit, and then just continue to fire. You know what I mean? And you could, and the cop got shot in the eye. He got shot in the eye, and you could hear his last breaths. You know, his blood's coming out of his mouth, gargling and shit like that. Fucked up. You know what I mean? But it's just like, yo, how many chances are you gonna give this dude? You know what I mean? Then you get the South Carolina cop, where, the black guy, he's like, oh, can you get your wallet for me, please? Black guy turns around, goes and gets the wallet, cop just starts dumping. And you get these other videos where, they just, it's like, okay, if he was black, like, he would have been shot like 15 minutes ago. He would at least be like, on the ground, something, be hit with the baton, something. They bringing out the mace, they spraying him and everything. And then out of nowhere, this dude just pop, 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 pop. Literally John Wick home invasion style. You don't even see where the gun's coming from. All you hear is just gunshots and shit. And he's literally firing. He's firing from like, what do you call it? Like, like from the hip and shit, and then raises up. You gotta see the shit. I'm like, damn, did them cops just get John Wicked? But again, no commotion. Where just like they like to say, well, where's Black Lives Matter on every little crime that happens in the black community now? Yeah, where was Blue Lives Matter on this shit? Where's Blue Lives Matter in the comment section? Where's the Blue Lives Matter? We support police. We support the blue. Where's that on this shit? Because the guy that shot the cops looked to be a white guy. It's fucking Utah. How many black people are in fucking Utah? But it's just crazy. It's unnecessary. I don't want to go to jail. He started crying and shit. He legit sounded like he was scared. You gotta watch the shit. He's like, no, I don't want to go to jail. All that shit. They finally get him out the car, and out of nowhere, pap, 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 pap. I'm like, oh shit. That shit went from 0 to 100 real quick. Real quick. I'll put the link in the description box. Remind me if I don't, because you know how I forget. But anyway, that's all I got to say. That's literally all I got to say. I'm going to go work out now. But, it's just like, you can't win. And I'm saying, it's like, sometimes I think, like, myself and even other black people, like, we can get stupid sometimes, because it's like, we still have this idea of disbelief. We're still like, yo, it can't be this blatant. Like, it's like, I'm showing it to you. I'm showing it to you in real time. And yet and still, it will still be denial. No matter how many times the shit happens. It's just denial. It's just so blatant. I'm like, weren't you Mr. Personal Responsibility? Weren't you Mr. Well, black people need to go off and do this and do that? Just like I said with that white kid. My father says black people need to handle their own business. Okay, fine. You're right. We need to go off and do that. Black people even look like they're about to do something. They even look like they're mobilizing. Oh my God, reverse racism. This is anti-white. It's nuts. And see, the truth be told, what they really want is they want black people. They like when they talk about the reverse racism type of shit, right? They're saying, oh, well, see, we're forced to accept black people in society, and we really don't want to accept them, right? But then completely ignore the fact that they keep black people at the lower rungs of society and think that black people are supposed to accept that. So the illusion is, well, we do embrace you and incorporate you into society. Right? You can live wherever you want. That doesn't mean that we're not going to fuck with you. But you can. We're not allowed to create laws that directly discriminate against you on the color of your race or your creed, right? So what we do is we set it up to where, we're just going to fuck with you and make the conditions so goddamn miserable, that you don't want to be around us. We're going to make sure that everything is just so unbearable, and you're supposed to accept that, right? Where it's like black people, it's like, why should we even play that game? First off, you would have to create two conditions. You would have to create a situation where not only are black people in the position to treat white people like shit and get away with it and make conditions so unbearable that white people want to leave, but the environment would already have to be so awesome and so beneficial and so many resources there and everything else that white people want to move in and don't want to leave. And that would be the only situation and circumstance where black people would have to then do backdoor ways of treating white people so bad that white people would want to leave, because that's what white people do to black people. You see what I'm saying? Like, you have to flip so much, even just to get to that scenario. Just to get to the scenario where white people are running into black diners like, it's my right to be here. You know what I mean? White people are fighting to get their black children, their white children into black universities and shit. You know, white people are fighting to get their children into black schools because those black schools, that means so much for their future. Like, you see how much you would have to flip. You know, white people are trying to move into black communities because the property values in black communities appreciates 3 times more than it does in white communities. Like, you'd have to literally flip the whole society to even get to the situation where you would even have white people in a position begging and pleading with black people to be accepted, so to where black people could discriminate against white people. This is why it's such a false equivalence when white people try to be like, oh, reverse racism. You know how much you would have to flip in society or flip in a predominantly black community in order to create a situation of reverse racism, to even make it so that white people even want to be there, so to even be able to be discriminated against. It's nuts. Anyway, I don't want to make this video any longer. That's my video. SWP out.
Prospect Park is this beautiful neighborhood, very close to downtown, very close to the University of Minnesota, right on the banks of the Mississippi River. It was a very desirable neighborhood, and I think neighbors weren't surprised when they saw a house that fit into this neighborhood on what is now East Franklin Avenue.
Madison Jackson. He was a guy who had a law degree, but he was a Pullman porter. He moved his family to Prospect Park, and he built a house there. This was the first black family there.
My father had bought a piece of land in what is known as Prospect Park, Minneapolis, and he broke ground to build the house in which I grew up. Until the house was nearly completed, the completely white community did not realize that a black family was moving in. And when we moved in, the whole community became quite aroused that a black family should be moving in.
Marble Jackson, she said, when the neighbors across the street saw who they were, she said that lady started screaming when she realized that it was an African-American family that was moving in across the street from her.
I was 7, so I remember them. Meetings on our lawn as to why we could not live there. When my father and mother wouldn't budge, they had committees come to meet them. And I remember sitting on the steps listening to some of the things that were said. For instance, one of the things, our children will not play with your children. And my father hadn't thought about the impact on the children. My father built us a playground like there was no other like it in the whole area. And we became the most popular children in the place. The neighbors couldn't keep their children away.
A little while after they moved in, the father's friend and coworker also wanted to build a house in the neighborhood.
William and Daisy Simpson, they were going to build a house as well. And they were staying in the Jackson house while their house was under construction.
And I think that was the tipping point.
And that's when the resistance from white homeowners really ramped up.
And this is where the Tribune reports a race war in Prospect Park.
This mob of over 100 people, the newspaper described it as some of the most powerful people in Minneapolis, marched on the Jackson house in October of 1909. They read prepared statements.
It was decided that a large delegation should call upon you to make doubly impressive a fact, namely, that the white residents of this district do not want members of your race domiciled in our midst. We are not here to argue, but to make a perfectly plain statement of our position in the matter, to wit, that we do not want you.
And as men of prudence, judgment, and determination, we will do everything we can to prevent this. And then there was another threat.
Rumors have been brought to our attention that there are parties in this vicinity who are determined that you and those of your race shall not reside in this district, that they have firmly declared themselves ready to take any steps necessary to bring about your removal.
And you have to understand, in 1909, this is a period where lynchings are commonplace. These were not idle threats. The amazing thing to me is that both of these families persisted. They stayed in their houses. The Simpsons built a lovely home, which is still there today. Marvel blazed a trail. She was the first African-American child to go through Pratt Elementary School. I learned that her mother had actually dated W.E.B. Du Bois before marrying Madison Jackson. That gives me clues as to what that household must have been like. As soon as they became teenagers, all those white friends she had basically abandoned her.
At that time, I determined I was going to get out of that kind of society and go where my people were.
She went to the University of Minnesota, where she dated Roy Wilkins and was engaged to him briefly. As soon as she finished at the University of Minnesota, she got out of Minneapolis.
Her parents had protected her, I think, from a lot of the racism in her childhood, but when you get to be a grown-up, you certainly can experience this more. And she realized there was really no place for her here. Well, Minneapolis's loss was the Harlem Renaissance gain.
She ended up moving to New York City. She ended up working for W.E.B. Du Bois. She ended up becoming one of the premier African-American journalists in the country. And then she became one of the first Black journalists to work for an all-white publication. So she has this incredible career, incredible talents, gifts, passion, and Minneapolis lost her. Madison Jackson died in 1927. Once he died and they sold the house, both families left Minneapolis. And I just wonder what it would have been like, if they had been welcomed. If Prospect Park had become an enclave for Black intellectuals and Black civil rights activists. What would that have been like? How would the city be different? And that's what I think about a lot when I think about this story.
The problem with the Madison Jackson and William Simpson incident is people had to show up in their front yard and threaten them. And this was in 1909. I don't think it's any coincidence that in May of 1910, the first racial covenant shows up in South Minneapolis. I'm pretty sure I know who wrote that covenant, and that was one Edmund G. Walton. He was a real estate developer. The legacy he left on Minneapolis, there's Edmund Boulevard, there's all these additions with his last name. Really, probably the most important and the worst was this legacy of racial covenants.
So when people purchase a home, traditionally you get an abstract package. And it shows every time your property, the property that you've just purchased, changed hands. And in Minneapolis, properties that were platted after 1910 are very likely to have these racial restrictions embedded in the property deed.
Covenants can be building covenants, they can be setback requirements, but the racial covenants that we're concerned with tells you who can or cannot live, lease, even occupy certain spaces.
Racially restrictive covenants, private contracts between individuals that allow them to dictate to whom they'll sell their property.
Identifying racial covenants, however, has proved remarkably challenging. The only way to find racial covenants are to read warranty deeds. We're looking at about 3 million deeds in Hennepin County between 1900 and 1960, and each deed on average runs about 3 pages. So we're in the ballpark of 10 million or so pages of text. Penny found about 4,000, 5,000 racial covenants by herself. The old-fashioned way. She just went down to the county recorder's office and started going through deeds. And she found several thousand racially restrictive covenants, and that was enough to get us thinking, okay, hey, maybe we can do more than just show that racial covenants were a practice that was used in Minneapolis. What if we can map all of them? The first map that Penny made was shocking. I was shocked when I saw this, and I was shocked when she started reading me some of the language of these racial covenants.
The wording can be very different. They're working on early 20th century ideas of race.
Chinese, Japanese, Negro, Moorish, Turkish,
Mongolian,
Hebrew, sometimes Semitic.
people of African blood or descent. No Negroes or Jews. Only Caucasians, except for their domestic servants of a different race who might be domiciled with the owner.
Many of them were written during the period where eugenics is at front and center of American scientific thought, and that language is often what you see in these deeds.
Only people of the Aryan race can inhabit this land.
Or the Aryan branch of the Caucasian race.
I think one of the surprising things that I found in this research is 100% of these covenants are aimed at African Americans.
This is Levittown, Pennsylvania, a new suburban community of 60,000 people midway between Philadelphia and Trenton, New Jersey. With its giant shopping center, winding lanes named for flowers and trees, it is fairly typical of communities all over America, where families are pursuing the American dream to give their children a better chance in life. Levittowners are people of modest means. Nearly all are young people. A large proportion are veterans. There are few social agencies, and while many religious groups have established churches, they've not yet had time enough to develop programs to adequately serve the community. Most Levittowners are proud and happy in their new environment. For many, it is the first house of their own, and it represents a major financial investment. Social life is mainly confined to visits with the neighbors. Occasionally, there are community-wide events, but it's too early yet for most residents to become identified with the broader aspects of community living. Levittown was built by one man for whom it is named. Like many community developers, he set the initial policy and provided a minimum of essential services. When the houses were sold, naturally, he went to its own slender resources. In August 1957, Levittown, Pennsylvania attracted international attention when violence erupted as William Myers, Jr. and his family moved into the 3-bedroom house at Daffodil and Deep Green Lanes. In almost all respects, the Myers family is close to the Levittown norm. They have 3 small children, the youngest only 1 month old. Myers served for 2.5 years in the Army and was discharged as a staff sergeant. He works as a laboratory technician and is studying for a degree as an electrical engineer. His wife, Daisy, is a college graduate. The Myers home is modestly furnished, and their late model family car was bought on time. They are very close to the Levittown norm, except in one respect. William Myers, Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community. Levittown reacted in a number of ways to the new arrivals. There were several hundred who congregated on the street in front of the Myers house, and there were those among them who felt strongly enough to throw a rock through the picture window. But there was another large group who were repelled by this kind of behavior and organized to help Levittown accept its first Negro neighbors. The vast majority of Levittowners went peacefully about their daily activities, but in the stores and at the schools and on the front lawns, Levittowners discussed the Myers.
Well, I first read a small article in the newspaper that the first colored family had moved into this community, and following that, why I began to hear on the radio and read in the newspaper that there was some disturbance around this home that these people had bought.
What was your initial reaction?
I was terribly shocked to find that there were people in this community who would be so violently opposed to it. I rather thought that everyone would just accept it as I would.
Was the community prepared in any way for the entrance of the first Negro family into all-white Levittown?
Well, there was an attempt by a group of ministers who formed a group called the Human Relations Council, and they were just getting started on their work. I don't know how they expected to ultimately accomplish the purpose of educating everyone, but I know that they had an open forum one time, and just within the last 3 or 4 months, and the results of it were published in the paper.
Do you feel it was effective?
No, I'm afraid it was just a drop in the bucket. Not very many people even read or were aware of the article or of the meeting that preceded it.
Although there had been little interest in the formation of the Human Relations Council some weeks before, the Myers became the main topic of conversation for the people of Levittown within a few hours of their arrival. In the absence of fact and authoritative information on a situation like this, rumor and gossip sweep through the community. As the stories pass from one person to another, because hardly anybody knows the truth, what everybody is saying becomes the fact.
Oh, I heard lots of rumors. I was busy telling people not to believe them.
What kind?
Well, that they'd been sponsored. Chiefly, I think people resented, after they heard this rumor and believed it, they resented feeling that some outside group had deliberately moved these people in, that they were sponsored and paid by an outside group to do this very thing. And I had been told on good authority that that wasn't true at all, and so I told people that it wasn't true.
Do you feel that understanding the facts of the situation will help?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm sure that a more reasonable attitude is going to prevail in this community, and I have great faith in the people here, and that they'll soon find out there's nothing to be afraid of.
Some view the incident calmly and indicate acceptance of the fact. But for others, the Myers moving into Levittown constitutes an infringement of their own liberties. And under the impact of this situation, they react with anger and force. What they say reveals their deepest fears and frustrations. Why did you select Levittown to live?
We were looking for a place to buy a home. We looked at Levittown, and we liked the homes here. We liked the advantages that Levittown seemed to offer in comparison to other cities. And we understood that it was going to be all white, and we were very happy to buy a home here.
How about your children? Have you talked with them about the Myers?
We have tried to keep the discussions away from the children. I feel that it's something that we adults should solve without bringing the children into it any more than we have to. We're doing it for the children, but I don't feel that they are old enough to understand the problem as it is.
Do you think a Negro family moving here will affect the community as a whole?
Definitely.
In what way?
I think that, well, the property values will immediately go down if they are allowed to move in here in any number.
Can you give a basis for that judgment?
Yes, we used to live in Washington, D.C., and we saw a very good example of that there.
The repetition of an experience that was distasteful. Is there to be no escape from living near Negroes? And what of the dream of middle-class respectability? If a Negro family can afford what you can afford, how do you justify your feeling of superiority? The illogic of one's own position becomes apparent, and in self-justification, the old tribal myths are invoked. What other objections, aside from the effect on property values, do you have against the Myers?
The whole thing centers around the word integration. Well, as Mr. Myers said, because his home has been anything but peaceful since he moved in. He's got 3 children, and evidently he feels that they will be accepted socially. And I don't feel that they ever will be. But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites. But the only way they're going to do that is by education and by bettering themselves, not by pushing in the way they have here.
Do you intend to move?
At the time, no. It's a pretty impossible situation. We have our home here, and if the colored move in and run real estate values down, there are a lot of us, the GIs particularly, who are going to be more or less stuck with their homes.
As the lines are drawn, those on either side become more adamant. Tension develops and feeds on suspicion and mistrust. What has been the effect of the Myers coming here?
Well, it's created a great deal of tension, not among the neighbors, because we all feel the same. But it's naturally made everyone tense in their home. I mean, this is affecting our homes. And it's bound to create tension. It's the subject that's talked about all the time.
But there are others who are for the Myers?
Yes, I've read about them.
For what reason, do you think, do they support the Myers?
Frankly, I don't know what reasons they can have for it. If there are homeowners in Levittown, I don't see what reasons they can have for it.
Do you think Myers will be able to live here comfortably?
Comfortably? No.
What course of action are you going to follow?
I'll do what I can to help to get them out legally and peacefully. And as far as accepting them socially, if that's what you mean, I could never do that.
Since 1960, more than 1 million whites have left New York City. The black and Hispanic population has grown by almost 1 million, and it's still growing.
This is Rosedale, a community of 6,000 families in the far southeastern pocket of the borough of Queens. To the passing eye, it seems quiet. Modest 1- and 2-family homes with fenced-in lawns and tree-shaded streets. The people who live here are almost all white, working-class Americans of Italian, Irish, and Jewish roots. They've worked all their lives to afford these homes. Many came from the inner city, refugees from neighborhoods in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and South Jamaica. Neighborhoods they saw changing and dangerous to live in. These people saved their money and made their escape to what they called the last frontier in New York City, to Rosedale, to what they hoped would be a safe and quiet life. In the early 1970s, a few middle-class black families with very much the same idea in mind began to move to Rosedale too. The whites saw their coming as a threat, the forerunner of more blacks bringing crime, blight, and poor services they had witnessed in other neighborhoods in the city. And the peace of Rosedale was shattered.
In 1971, a score of men and teenage boys using axes and picks nearly destroyed a house reportedly bought by a black man married to a white woman. 200 residents stood by and watched. Since then, more than 10 acts of violence have been aimed at the few blacks living in Rosedale.
The tension escalated with the coming of the Spencers. In the summer of '74, Tony and Glenda Spencer bought this 7-room house on 136th Avenue. They came to New York from the West Indies after living in London. Spencer, a photo engraver in Manhattan, said they just wanted a good place to live. But some whites suspected them of blockbusting, of trying to force lower property values on Rosedale homes so other blacks could afford to buy here. Before the Spencers moved in, their house was set on fire with gasoline. They moved anyway. On New Year's Eve day a year ago, while the Spencers and their sons slept, a pipe bomb exploded on the porch and smashed through the windows of the house. Police said the bomb was intended to wipe out the family. Attached to the bomb was a note that read, "Nigger be warned. We have time. We will get your firstborn first." It was signed, "Viva Boston, KKK."
blacks better turn around, y'all. Don't come back. Don't come back. Don't come back. It is the Negroes running with them, pal.
We were riding down this block, and these white people start saying, "Get out of here, niggas. You know, get out of my neighborhood. Don't come to this neighborhood." And then they start hitting on her.
Throwing rocks and everything else.
Throwing rocks. Because we were in their neighborhood.
We went on a bike hike to McDonald's. We didn't mean to bother anybody.
We had a nice
We saw a parade, we saw a gathering, so we went down there to see what was happening. All right. I mean, we didn't bother anybody. We weren't looking for trouble. I never even know people around here were like that. I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
What happened to you?
Nothing happened to me, but this little boy, short boy about my size, or little short, had picked up a rock, and he was in the front of all these tall hunkies. But he threw the rock. He tried to hit my sister, but he almost hit me about that much away from me. And I sure wish he had hit me with that rock. I would pick up the rock right next to me and hit him right dead in his face.
They always say niggas are doing everything. They always say we're doing everything, right? Every time the white people come down the block, we don't push them out their neighborhood and throw rocks and start hitting them.
We don't bother the white people around our neighborhood, but when we get in a white neighborhood, they just push us out.
Yeah. Everybody with us, they said we're nothing, you know, they were a piece of dirt, dogs. I mean, that's the way you treat an animal. I mean, God, we're human beings. You don't treat other people like that. It's just wrong. Black, white, I don't care. A person is a person. Skin should have no bearing on how you treat a person. That's just wrong.
I hate their goddamn guts.
Speak.
I can't say that I hate them. I can't say that it's totally the kids' fault. I mean, I'm sure their parents had some bearing on the way they feel and everything else. I think it's just the system. I don't know. I can't say that I hate them because I don't hate anybody.
Do you forgive them?
No. No. Can't take back no hurt. But they gonna always do that. They always spit on us like we some dogs. They always gonna do
back
that.
on them.
Ain't nothing gonna change.